Welcome to another episode of Growth Marketers Podcast. I am Solomon Timothy.
And I am Taylor Rowe. Today's episode was a Q&A edition. So we took in some questions from our listeners, from our audience, from you guys. So we got into a couple of different topics around tracking and attribution, around measuring success when it comes to marketing and what channels we should use as B2B marketers. So hopefully you guys enjoy. Hopefully we answered your questions to the best that we could. And as always, give us a like, subscribe, share this podcast with a friend or a colleague, and tune in next time. Enjoy.
All right, Taylor, today we're going to be doing a couple questions from our audience that was sent in since we last recorded the questions. So okay. I think these are some good questions. I picked 3 to go over today. We're going to go right to it so we can spend as much time giving great answers if that's okay.
Yeah,
sounds good. So the first question I think is very relevant, especially for us, as an agency, to say, what sort of tasks, campaigns do I do in-house versus an agency? Like, what do I give to my agency and what do I do in-house? I'm sure this is from somebody who's trying to, maximize resources internally, externally. Yeah. So what are your thoughts?
Well, I think this is interesting because we are obviously a marketing agency. We have a marketing agency. So, I think the, standard answer would be, we want everything to be outsourced to an agency, but I actually don't believe that. Because I think there's some things that an agency can do really well and that there's a reason to hire an agency, and some things that you should always do in-house. And I think when you get those two mixed, that's where the agency, when your expectations are off, that's where the agency idea or the idea of outsourcing it can get a bad rap, right? Because, you outsource something and it didn't work. And so you say that, well, hiring an agency doesn't work. Really, there's a couple of things, right? I think the best way that you can work with an agency and the clients that have the most success with us and the way that we try to build our model is, let's start with the beginning, which is the strategy, right? So, okay, the direction, the strategy, what are we going to try to actually implement from a marketing perspective? That should be a collaborative effort where you work together. I think it can be agency-led, and we have a process that we go through with our clients to develop that strategy because this is what we do, right? So if you don't have confidence in the fact that you have a marketing strategy, a marketing plan put together by a senior level experienced marketer, I think that piece can be done either collaboratively or can be outsourced to the right agency or consultant to help you build that together. Once you have that plan, then you should have the actionable items or deliverables that need to be done, right? So, okay, here's what we want to do. So in order to execute this plan, we need blog posts and social media posts and images and graphics and landing pages, and we need a Google AdWords campaign, and we need, all these kind of things, right? So what you should do in-house, I think, is manage the subject matter expertise of whatever it is that you do. So if you sell a product or a service, the agency is never going to be as knowledgeable about your product or service as you are internally. So I think that level of the content creation, if you're creating videos about your offering, or you're writing even a blog post or creating a podcast or anything like that, social media post, I think that should be done and owned in-house. I think agency can help support that and help build out a content calendar. And then, if it's a blog post, they can help optimize that blog post for search or help promote that content on different ad platforms. But I think anything that requires you to have an in-depth level of knowledge or expertise about your offering or your customer, I think that needs to be handled internally. And I think that's the piece that a lot of marketers don't want to do, or they say, we don't have resources to write 10 blogs a month or whatever the strategy is. So they want to outsource that. And I think that's the lazy, easy way out, because someone else will do it for you, but they're not going to do it as good as you can do it if you learn how to do it the right way, right? They might know how to hey, it needs to be 5,000 words and it has to have this keywords and this is the title and here's the internal linking structure. But the actual content, that valuable piece of the whole puzzle, should be handled internally. And then where you outsource is, I think, typically, aside from that strategy and that partner to help you guide and point you in the right direction on the consultant side, I think it's the specialty areas where it doesn't make sense for you to hire internally, depending on your business model or your marketing plan. Development, for example, I think most marketing companies don't have a high level, full stack developer in-house, right? So I think, design development can be outsourced. I think specialty tactics within something like SEO, I think, the content piece, if I were going to build out, if my strategy was to drive a ton of organic traffic, I would hire in-house. I would hire basically journalists. I would hire copywriters, but I would outsource the optimization of that content, the technical fixes on the website, and things like link building or outreach for PR, those kind of things, because it wouldn't make sense to staff that up in-house. I would have people that are dedicated to just learning about my product and service, about my industry, and writing content and pumping that content out. So I think that part can be collaborative. Paid search, I would say, or paid media. Honestly, this would probably depend on the size of your company and probably your ad spend. I mean, if you're spending, hundreds of thousands of dollars a month or, something like that, then it probably would make sense for you to build a team internally. But at the end of the day, there's companies and agencies that have teams that are dedicated to this, resources, tools, and technologies. I mean, a lot of the enterprise, Google Ads platforms are very, very expensive that, wouldn't make sense for you to buy internally that, an agency might have access to. So I think it just depends on, for something like ad spend would depend on the size of the company and what you guys are doing. I don't know if that answers the question, but I guess to summarize, I would say the strategy and consulting piece and then specialty areas, I think, is where I would outsource.
And the way I look at it is a company that does the same thing over and over and over every day is going to have way better process and systems and checking quality and what's good, what's bad than a company that does something else as a business. Marketing is not the business that they're in. So no matter, you wouldn't even know how to hire for the right talent because, again, your business is something completely different, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, that's a great point. It's like this, depending on the size of your existing marketing department, there's challenges that come up with that, because I think that first marketing hire is very difficult for a lot of companies because, like you said, they don't know what to ask, what to look for. It's easy to get somebody to seem like they know what they're talking about. And then everything from there on is built on that person's understanding and that person's strategy. So you may go down completely. You might hire the wrong people after that person because they're doing the hiring. You might hire the wrong agency to help you because they don't know what they're doing. So a lot of the rides on that first hire. I would say if you have a larger marketing department or marketing team, you made an interesting point, is like, at what point is there that trade-off where you're going to get more value of someone who just does your business and just works 40 hours a week for your business versus someone who has a system in place?
Right.
And that's why I think content creation falls into that category, because you can have as good of a system as you want for content creation to, like, writing a blog. I'm saying something like that for an outsourced agency, but it's still, that person still has to research about your product, service, sit there and type it up and go through edits and all those kind of things. So I don't know how much more effective that could be than someone who's in-house if you're going to create that level of content.
Right.
Now, if you're going to create one blog post a month,
it's not worth it.
Then you look at that, right? So it's like, where's that breaking point of, does it make sense for me to have someone dedicated? That's why I say those specialty areas, it's always, I think, going to make more sense to outsource, because even if you focus on that 40 hours a week, that person is still operating with blinders on, because they're only working on, even if you have a web developer, for example, they're only working on your website all the time. But if you have that person that's outsourced, they're working on hundreds of websites and they're seeing what's happening in the industry, seeing trends, seeing changes. Their rate of improvement is so much faster than someone who's just sitting there and only managing a social media account, or only, running ads, or only doing development for one website. So yeah, there's a sliding scale of like how much work you actually have for that particular strategy. Like one blog post a month or one landing page a month. You don't need a developer, a designer, content writer in-house, right? So when you get to scale, then you still have that question of, where's the trade-off of hiring someone in-house, that learning curve, all those kind of things, versus someone who is a specialist at this. So it depends on every company, but I think there's room for both in-house and agency.
Definitely. And I think it's a hybrid. At some point, some things are cheaper, if it's something small, and to pay an agency. If it's a minor piece of your bigger marketing strategy. I wouldn't give the most valuable piece. I would want an expert working on my stuff, right? Yeah. I wouldn't try to do my own surgery.
Yeah, and that's a real question that I think it's not so much hire versus agency.
It's the expertise.
Well, yeah, and a lot of times what happens is it's not that they're going to make an additional hire or additional expenditure. I see a lot of the question of, we're going to try to do it with our existing resources, right? Because you look at that as a fixed cost and you're like, we're already paying for this person, this intern, or this person who's in sales, but also, they built a website at their last company, or they're younger, so they can manage social media. And it's like, let's just give them 2 jobs. We don't have to pay them more, or we'll pay them 10% more rather than hiring a new person or hiring an agency. And that is a completely different conversation, because that's like the opportunity cost, like you said, of doing the wrong thing or not having the expert drive your strategy. And I actually probably see that more often than hiring one person, because I think once you go down that road of here's the strategy, you start to realize that it's not a one person job. So like I said, even a simple, a campaign, like you might need email, you might need a landing page, which needs design and development. Then you need copywriting for the landing page and for the emails. Then you need an ad that you have to put together to promote the landing page. So then you need someone who knows social or Google, copywriting, design, all those kind of things, right? So now you're talking about 3-4 people that might have to get involved. So I think that's where the question is, well, I know I'm not going to hire 4 people, but we might use 1.5 people that we already have, and we just know it's going to take a little longer to get it done. And we're not going to increase our costs, but you're just going to delay results, or maybe never get the results because you don't know what you're doing.
Right. And I think most marketers or CEOs or the folks that are in making decisions for marketing underestimate the value of time, right? Like the time part is actually what you should solve for. Who's going to get it done faster, and they're going to get it done right.
Which is funny, because usually what I see, the biggest proponent for bringing on an agency is that in-house marketer.
Yeah.
They're the ones that, like you said, value the time and know, like, man, if I could find someone that could help me take this off my plate, or find somebody that could show me a better way to do this, it would save me so much time. And if I had that time, I could focus on X, Y, and Z.
Right. The things that can move the needle.
Right. So a lot of times those in-house marketing people are the biggest proponent of hiring an agency, which like I said, the question is, either or. And I don't think it's either or. I think you need an in-house marketing team. How big or small that is, that depends on what you're trying to do and the size of your company. You need some kind of resource internally, right? Because that agency needs some people to work with, of course, to progress. And if that agency is just working with someone in sales or a senior, like a CEO or owner, there's going to be a disconnect, because that owner is not focused on marketing all the time. Yep. And if they are focused on marketing all the time, they're neglecting some other aspect of their business.
Absolutely. And I'm with you on that. I think we really, really given some thought onto this. What should you do? How to think about it? If you have more questions, hey, that's what we're here, right?
Yeah.
Growth marketers at OneIMS.com. Send us an email. We'll get back to you. So next question we have is MQL versus SQL. Should I measure MQL? First of all, Taylor, let's talk about what these things are, because, they're probably here.
Go ahead. I'll let you give the...
there's people here that may not know what it is. So if you're a brand new marketer, never heard these terms, I don't want you tuning out of this podcast and checking out another one. We're going to break this down for you. So MQL simply means a marketing qualified lead, versus SQL is sales qualified lead. What is a marketing qualified lead, Taylor?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the definition would basically be someone who has converted, or it doesn't have to be converted, but a prospect, a contact. I would even look at it as like a cookie, right? It's anybody who has showed interest in your services and fits some sort of criteria that you have. So if you were in the sales team, probably have like an ideal customer profile. If you're a marketing team, you have some sort of persona. So you know who this person is. It's a known contact. So we can market to them because they are a good fit, but they might not necessarily be in market, or they haven't been qualified on a phone call in terms of, BANT or something like that, budget, need, authority, timeline. So we know that they fit our target market, but we don't know necessarily that they're in market to make a purchase, or that they're considering our product or service.
Absolutely. And in marketing in general, that's MQL. Can we talk about SQL?
So SQL is, that next step, right? Is sales qualified lead, meaning they fit the first set of criteria, and also they've shown some interest. So we've had I would qualify it as we've had a conversation with them and the sales team agrees that they fit these 3 or 4 criteria that we can start the sales process. I think that would be the best way to differentiate between the two.
Absolutely. The question was, should I measure MQLs?
Right. So I would say no, because I think we live in a world right now that there's so much data and we have so much ability to target people and to get people's contact information that there's really no, if the idea is that they fit our criteria and we have their contact information, you can go sign up for a Zoom Info subscription and
have 100 million contacts
for pennies. I mean, I don't know exact cost of 50 cents a record or whatever it is. You know what I mean? It's like, it's way cheaper to get MQLs that way than it is to try to get $10 or $20 ebook downloads on Facebook. And then, the sales team complains that those people don't close. So I don't think MQL is a reasonable, or I don't think it's an impactful measurement for a marketing team. I think if you're a marketing team and you're measuring on that, 2 things are going to happen. One is that there's going to be a big divide between the sales and the marketing team, because you're going to continue to ramp those numbers up, and all of your metrics and maybe even your bonuses and all those kind of things are going to be based around leads generated. And you're going to do everything you can to get more SQLs. And what's going to happen is then the salespeople are not going to close a lot of those deals. So then you start to fight, right? Because it's like, well, the salespeople are the problem because I generated 1,000 leads last year and only 2 of them closed into business. Not my fault. I got you the leads, and I have all this attribution data to show you the channels they came from and what, they downloaded the ebook and they came to our website and all these kind of things. And so there's going to be, like I said, a big kind of battle internally, which is not good. The second thing is that these different channels that you're optimizing for, you're going to start optimizing for the wrong metrics because you're just looking at those conversions, right? So even on the micro scale of like running Facebook ads, the best way, is like a Facebook lead ad is the cheapest way to get contact information. And so then the algorithms of those ads are going to start, you're going to be optimizing for the lowest cost per lead so you can scale your budget and get more MQLs and meet those metrics. And it's just going to be the wrong people because those are the people that are converting on that versus if you had a different strategy. So to me, SQL or even the further in the pipeline you can get for a marketing measurement is what you should look at. Like marketing, I wouldn't even say marketing influenced revenue, but like marketing sourced revenue, meaning where did those leads came from? They came from marketing, then they turned into revenue. Like that's the metric. So what is that ROI? Forget about all those other things. Like how do they find out about you and are they purchasing? Which the short term KPI would be sales qualified, right? Because you can't control on the marketing side if they actually close. So if they're booking demos or they're booking time on the sales rep's calendar and they're qualified, like at least you're influencing that pipeline. So like marketing sourced pipeline maybe is the metric, but that's more of an SQL than just MQL.
Got it. Well, what about those people that are tracking MQL today and they're so happy they make 20 new MQLs a week?
Right. For what? I mean, I would look at the big metrics. We have clients like this that come to us and they say, right now we have 60 MQLs and that gives us 3 customers and our goal is to get 30 customers. So we just need 600 MQLs. And it's like, what? Or why? That seems like such a big task just because you have that conversion rate and it's so small means like you're going to, let's just try to get more MQLs when you should be looking at, that is such a small conversion rate. Maybe MQL is the wrong metric to track, right? But as soon as people find that equation of how many MQLs it takes to get a certain number of SQLs to get a certain number of deals, a lot of times you start doubling down on that top metric because like it will work at some rate, but I don't think that's the best rate to do.
Got it. So focus on SQLs. Ideally focused on revenue, work backwards.
Right.
That's you didn't have sales conversations.
Yeah, I think if you're in B2B space, we talk about in the first question is like the value of the time is like, if, like I said, if the goal is now 600 MQLs, how many sales reps is it going to take to take all those leads and follow up with them until they can become an SQL?
Right.
And at what cost? Like, what are they actually turning in? Like I said, it might only be 2 or 20 or however many it is. So now we have, how much does that cost? Is that factored into your ROI? That it cost, we had to hire 3 new SDRs just to qualify people and move them on to the, the next step. And like I said, wouldn't it be cheaper if that's your goal, just get those leads from Zoom Info and then cold outreach to them, because it's going to cost a lot less. And you can have a sales process in place that's not, hey, I saw you download an ebook. Let me follow up with you 1,000 times.
Yep. No, absolutely. I think an ebook it is what it is. You're getting an ebook. So any final thoughts on that one before we move on?
Yeah, I just
I know you hate MQLs at this point, but get it out.
It's just vanity metrics. I think
it's like likes on a post.
Yeah, if you have to manipulate the numbers that much to try to justify your job or your position, then either your company doesn't understand marketing and how it should work. You're just doing the wrong things, right?
Sure.
But
remember, MQL could turn into an SQL overnight.
Well, the problem is that it does happen, right? And it does happen. It's just such a small percentage that happens. And there's even smaller percentage of the people that actually convert on that form in the first place. So like, I would rather have higher quality leads, bottom of the funnel, with less salespeople and less overhead.
Yep.
To have to sit there and take all those calls, and more money on marketing, because you can do marketing at scale, right? You can't do the sales at scale from that perspective.
Absolutely. All right, we're going to do one more. Ready? It's good stuff. Does social work for B2B? Or should I focus on social media stuff as a B2B company? Or should I just focus on, bottom of funnel, get Zoom info, email the right decision maker, create, opportunity for a sales call? Why would I waste my time creating content and 50 times a week and, 5 different platforms?
Yeah. I mean, I think bad marketing never works, right? So it doesn't matter what platform it is. The common objection of social would be like, well, we're B2B, like our customers aren't on social media, or like our customers are CEOs, like they're not spending their time scrolling through Facebook, right? I mean, we look at the stats, and like the percentage of Americans, or just anybody who's on social platforms, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, I would include YouTube and some of those other channels in there in terms of social, anything that's passive, right? Not an active intent to make a purchase. Like Google is obviously the number one for that. Yeah. If your audience is there, then yes. Second, you have to approach your marketing and understand what your customer is doing on the platform. It is a passive channel. So if your goal is to, like we just talked about, get MQLs, you're going to get very low quality leads. The salespeople aren't going to like it. They're not going to turn into deals. And then you're going to say social media doesn't work. But if your goal is, hey, my audience is here, let me educate them, let me show them something, let me intrigue them a little bit or introduce them to my product or service, then you've won. If you're just looking at your targeting, Facebook in general, the targeting capabilities in Facebook are really unlike anything we've ever seen from a marketing perspective, right? Like you couldn't do that. Like you couldn't run a radio ad that was that targeted. You couldn't just show a billboard that, only senior VPs of SaaS companies drove by every day. Like it's so targeted, the targeting capabilities. When you layer that on with like behavioral characteristics and, things that Facebook probably can't even legally say that they're targeting you based on, I think that's powerful. So the reach and the scale is the power of a social platform, but you have to use that properly. You have to understand what you're measuring and what you're tracking. So it can be effective, but only if used the right way. If you think that as a B2B organization, you're going to use Facebook the same way that somebody selling, shoes or hats or yoga pants or whatever, like it's not going to work that same way. It's not a transactional, oh, that looks interesting. It's $50. Let me go quick check out Apple Pay.
Sure.
It's shipping to me in 2 days. Like that. It's not how your business works most likely in the B2B space. So you have to change your marketing strategy. But if you understand what the platform is good for, the reach, the scale, the targeting, and you use it to communicate with your audience, then 100% can be effective.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it really depends on your content creation capability. Do you have folks that's ready to do it? Can you build an organization where you can, adopt that, right? I mean, not everybody can just create content and, like you and I say all the time, cut it up into pieces, put it on LinkedIn. And it takes enormous amount of patience. Number one, project management, even strategy. What are you going to be writing about? But I think one thing that a B2B company cannot live without would be social ads. Mm-hmm. So like you said, the reach and the scale is there.
Sorry. Yeah. And that's pretty much what I was referring to. I guess I thought that was what the question was about,
but like social ads, I don't think, I don't think you should live without it, because I think the audience is there. They might step on your website for 10 seconds, but you capture them on a Facebook feed. You don't know the CEOs are on Facebook as well. They're not, they're scrolling through their feed just like anybody else. So
yeah. And actually, we should probably talk about the organic side too, because I think that can be super powerful. It just takes more time. Like you're saying, you have to have the resources either for organic or for paid to put something of value out there.
Yep.
I mean, that's going to be
and consistency, right? Back to our podcast episode, the first 10 might not get any views or downloads, but just like anything else. But over time, you're going to build the attraction. People are going to know that you put out good content. They're going to comment back. They're going to, engage with your content, and they almost get to a point they're expecting it. And so it takes a lot of time. I'm with you. B2B brands should do it if they have the bandwidth. I think it takes a lot of time. Do you go from a social post to a lead? Yes, they can. If it's at the right place at the right time, they will certainly do it. I know it can scale, but
and probably not. It's not the first time they've interacted with your brand. I think that's the problem. And people get so caught up in that attribution of like
last click.
Yeah. And I just don't, but there's a lot of stuff that happens that you can't track, unfortunately. That doesn't mean you shouldn't be doing it.
That leads me to one piece that we should end this podcast with is, iOS 14 and tracking.
Sure.
I think it was a nightmare for every marketer. And so what do? Because they no longer track anything more than a 7-day window, they think our ROAS is down. Everything is terrible. Same mentality. I used to be able to track all this stuff. I used to know everything from top to bottom, my click-through rate to my conversion, how much money we made. Now it's gone. Am I going to stop marketing?
Yeah.
I told my team, let me take everything away. Give me no report. I just had to put money in Facebook ads and I had no idea what happens. I would still market. Why? Because I know the people I'm trying to go after are there. Right. I'm not doing it based on 3% and 2.5% and this dollar amount per conversion. And the reason I say that is, like you said, back in the day, what did they do? They didn't have any reports coming out after you put a back page ad in the newspaper. They wrote really good headlines.
Yeah. Hey, how'd you hear about us?
They wrote really good headlines and really amazing copy, and they put it out there and hope for the best because that was all they had, right? So today we're just so caught up in numbers, so caught up in, oh my gosh, I got to have this, and this. And all my PPC person complain about, all our numbers are off. Everything's terrible. It's tanking. Why? Because we're so caught up in those little itty bitty metrics that we think is now marketing when we forgot the basics, which is communication. Right. You're communicating to your target audience and then get them to move.
I think that's an important distinction is it's not necessarily that the targeting is any different. It's that the reporting is different.
Right.
So
exactly.
if your ads were performing before in your audience, then why would you believe that it's different?
Right.
Just because you can only show a 7-day window.
Correct. That's what I'm saying. Well, on the dashboard is wrong, but in reality is your sales and your marketing and are you pulling in the qualified leads and whatever else you measure. And so I like how you always say that, metrics and this and that and last click attribution and all those things. Everybody gets so caught up in their tracking that tracking is now dictating marketing as opposed to deciding what to do with my company's marketing messages. Who do we show it to? And maybe measuring just SQLs. Forget everything else.
It's like we get so wrapped up in the data. We need a little bit more of, just intuition in marketing and kind of like, well, let's look at what we're actually doing. These are not numbers and, profiles. Like these are people that are scrolling through Facebook or LinkedIn or whatever. Like what messaging is going to resonate with them? How do we get them to click on this? How do we show them value once they're there? What are we going to give them that's of value in terms of an offer? And forget about all those other metrics. It needs to be cost effective in the reach based on the rates that you have, conversion rates. But I think you just have to look at that a little bit different and don't get so caught up in
and let the numbers are the only thing that can dictate it. I tell you, so many people are going to move money away from Facebook or Instagram or this or that because of this. And they're going to be making some terrible mistakes in my opinion, because they're not able to see the full picture. So anyway, that wraps up this episode. Any final thoughts? Anything you want to add?
Send in more questions. We love answering your questions. So if you have some questions, send them in and we'll do our best to answer them.
Absolutely. growthmarketers@oneims.com. That's our email. Thank you guys for tuning in and we'll see you all next time.
Growth Marketers is brought to you by OneIMS, helping you reach new heights through integrated marketing. One world, one web, one IMS.